Well, hello then, Grace Church again. I just want to welcome you to another story of faith. And we are so pleased to have James Hastings here with us today. And so, James, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get right into our story of faith today?
All right. My name's James Hastings. And as a lot of you probably know, I'm one of the ushers and head counters, and I've been attending Grace since '88, and I'm about 55 years old. And I've worked 3 jobs, one pre-COVID and 2 jobs during COVID, and I keep pretty busy also helping seniors and others in our community as well.
Wonderful. That's great, James. And yeah, you've definitely been a long time person that we've seen around at Grace Church for sure. And thanks for all your work that you do there for sure. All right, why don't we talk about some of the challenges or a particular challenge that you faced in your life where you really saw God at work in you, and maybe share a little bit about that story and what you learned from that and what God was trying to teach you from that.
Well, in 2020, COVID-19 was the last thing on my scale of importance. In April 2020, just after COVID broke, I was given a phone call when I was in bed from a Toronto police officer informing me that my birth mother was found dead in her apartment. And this began quite the series of events because she didn't have a written will. And although I'm her only biological child, I'm not her legal child because I was adopted away when I was 8. And this posed quite a few issues. So when Grace Church family got wind of this situation, they called me up. Different people called me up and said, "What can we do for you, James? What can we do?" And I said, "Pray for wisdom, strength, and discernment to get through this. If it was good enough for Solomon, it's good enough for me." And if you look at the situation, like by September of 2020, everything except for basically the income tax had been resolved. She had been cremated, interned. The bank accounts were on their way to being closed and taken care of. Like God just, right from the personality of the police officer who kept the stress down right from the beginning, dealing with my birth mother's not so nice landlords, to just the way his hand was into banking and just everything just going so smoothly. It was just, people are astonished as to how quick it happened.
Wow, that's wonderful to see how God was at work in that situation for sure. And you shared about another situation regarding a long-time job you had. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, most people that knew me from my early days of Grace and most of my years of Grace, I was at CD Candy, a Rockets factory. Yes, the Halloween candy, for 23 and a half years. And even though my base rate of pay was only $15.70 when you count my 5 weeks paid vacation, the Christmas bonus, Halloween bonus, and all the other perks and benefits, it was a good paying job. And 23 and a half years into it, they decided to buy me out and restructure. So I ended up hitting, all my non-church friends said to me, "Oh, what's the church going to do for you now?" They were very quickly silenced when they saw how the church came through with food hampers and other ways of moral support, which have been, and it's continued for years. The church has been watching out for me ever since, even because my pay now is very low, and they still watch out for me.
That is wonderful. Yeah, it's so great when you have your church family around to be able to support you like that, and how you can see God's hand at work in that process, right? Mm-hmm. And then I understand that even just recently you had an amazing experience because you actually had COVID at one point. Is that right?
Yes. My workplace, we had 13 of 24 people tested positive for COVID. I was the only one who was asymptomatic. Everyone else was either laid up for 4 days or hospitalized. And it was a blessing and a curse at the same time because I had all my energy. I'm like a little kid trapped in my toy room with the same toys for 10 days straight. And how bored does that get? Thankfully, to one of the elders in the church, who stopped by to check my mail and take my garbage out and get my essential foods I needed. That was a blessing again, where God's hand was in it.
Wow, that's so encouraging to hear, and that's what we want to be, right? As a Grace Church family, to be able to support each other when those kind of challenges come up, and God makes Himself so real in those situations for sure. So, James, tell us maybe, how would you encourage someone that's been facing similar challenges to you, whether it's been an illness like COVID, whether it's been they've lost their job, or even something as tragic as like losing a close loved one? How would you encourage people that are going through those kind of similar situations?
Well, I know when I lost my job, the first thing I thought is, I got to get a hold of somebody to pray with. Now, that was one time when, that's great. I wish I could think that way 100% of the time whenever I hit a crisis, but definitely go to somebody you can pray, that can pray with you, and get that started right away is one thing. And also just don't just remember, God knows what He's doing. Isaiah 55:8-9. He knows what He's doing. We only have a snapshot. He's got the big picture. So sometimes, as hard as it is for us, we just have to understand He's got the big picture. We may not see exactly why it's happening, but when the time comes, we'll know.
Right. And I think one thing that was important from what I heard from you is that it's important for us to also be willing to share some of our burdens with others, so they're aware, right, that we have a need.
True enough. Again, having a good network. Like, I have a great network around me, and I'm quite pleased with that. And that only started after I came to know the Lord.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, James, so great for you to share these things with us. Tell us maybe some prayer requests, some things that we can be praying for you for.
Well, definitely for my full-time job, as it is unfortunately a bit of a not so easy to work in situation. Pray for God to give me strength and wisdom and discernment in that situation.
Right.
Spiritually keep growing too.
Yes, for sure. Well, James, we certainly will be praying for you. And yeah, once again, we want to thank you for sharing your story of faith with us, and encouraging us with the way that God's been at work in your life, and how we also can trust Him as you have as well. So thanks again, James. We appreciate it.
No problems. Let's keep focused on God together.
All right. Take care.